there. And Charlie, I'm just going to unmute you and have you talk about, instead of me reading this whole thing, I want you to talk about it and tell me what to click on, and I'll click it as we go.
Okay, well, I have a Deluxe Reverb reissue that's needed a cap job for about a decade, and I'm too lazy to get around to it. But when we talked the other week about this mod that ended up merging the two channels of a black-faced amp, I said, hey, you know what? I'm going to think about doing that too, and I might as well do them both together. And so I started looking around on the web for a layout of the PC board in there, and it gave me this website from robrobinette.com that had all sorts of discussions of Deluxe Reverb modifications, and the first three had to do with different ways of merging the two channels together. And since we talked about that a couple of weeks ago, I thought, well, it'd be an interesting thing to inform people about. And so if you, let's try to remember which one's which. My screen just went out.
No,
yeah, mine too.
I'm trying to switch to a different one of these other schematics here. I don't know why it won't come up oh, this is the one right here. Yeah, this is the schematic.
So that's the complete schematic.
Right.
The other ones are the schematics showing the mods.
Okay, which mod do you want to look at first?
Well, let me look at I think it's the first one. It's the one I want to look at first.
Okay, let's see.
If they're in the order I sent them to you. I sent them in order. So.
Okay, so this must be the first one. Is this?
Yeah, that's it. Okay.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one we looked at last week.
Right. That's exactly it. So I thought I'd start there. And he has a criticism about this mod, which is that it, I'm trying to remember exactly what he said, but it basically involves too much crosstalk between the two channels. So I could just look here for 1 second. His comment was,
back up. He says, let's see here. The owner criticizes this method of running both channels through reverb and terminal does not use mixing resistors, so the two channels affect one another, which can cause fluctuating attenuation and distortion. The other problem I see is the merge is done before the coupling caps, and as the normal channel uses a 47 microfarad while the vibrato uses it's supposed to be a 0.02, one has to change the voicing in one channel. That's not true. You don't have to change the voicing in one channel. You got tone controls on each channel anyway, so you can set them however you want. And then the thing about the crosstalk, they're both in phase. So it's not like, it's not like you've got two completely different signals. I mean, these signals are pretty close.
The amp that was here that had that mod in it actually sounded just like a regular Fender amp. I mean, it didn't sound any different to me than, except that it had reverb on both sides.
Yeah, I don't see a problem with mixing it that way. I've seen lots of designs where they've mixed channels without merger resistors. But anyway, continue onward through the fog. So that was his criticism about that one.
Right. And the second one, click on the second one.
That's going to be the Fritz mod.
Fritz mod, yes, he calls it. And here the merge is done after the coupling caps.
Well,
and don't see any reason why there's a problem with that. But he mentions, and this I didn't get, is that the coupling caps now act as a capacitive voltage divider.
Yeah, they do.
Ah, okay. Explain that to me, Ulrich.
Well, if you connect it after the cap, you have to remember the plate of each of these tubes looks like a load to the other one.
Yeah.
And so if you come out, say, the 0.021, the signal is going to go through that cap, and then it's going to go through the 0.047, and it's going to see not only the plate resistance of the tube to ground through the cathode of that tube to ground, it'll also see the 100K as part of the load to ground, which, you know, through the B plus supply, it'll be to ground.
Yeah, I thought about that part. I didn't think about the tube though.
The tube is your enemy here, because if it's a 12AX7, it's about a 60K, 50 to 60K load. And so you're now driving that 0.02 cap through another cap into 60K. And so the 220K, which is normally the mixing resistor, is swamped out, right? It's a real high impedance compared to what the tube is actually driving. So,
Okay.
so in this case, basically, you're going to lose some bass, is what I would argue. You're going to lose some.
Yeah, because that's going to be half the value of
yeah,
whatever the smallest one is.
right. You're going to lose some bass, and you're probably on the high end. You're going to attenuate too, because the caps start looking like shorts at high frequencies, and so now your bottom tube is driving a 60K load.
Yeah.
Into the upper tube. It's just not a good thing to do.
I agree.
Okay. Well, he agrees also.
Okay, and then
I just didn't.
Go ahead.
And then anyway, the last one is this fellow's design, which involves some merger resistors, although it's done at that same point. In other words, he's adding a 220K coming out of the bottom coupling cap, and then connecting into a 220K up here. So there's at least a lot more resistance going back through the cap and the tubes. And that seems to make sense to me, but I'm reading what he wrote. He obviously isn't an unbiased person.
Well, this makes more sense to me than the last one, because it actually has isolation between the two channels, you know.
Yes.
Right, this solves the problem I was talking about, but so does the first solution. The first solution solves it too, because it doesn't involve the caps.
Right.
So the first or this third one, I would see as almost equivalent. Just different ways of cutting the same, cutting the same piece.
Yeah, okay. Then you don't see any sense to the objection he had to the first one. Which
you want to see
I
the
didn't
first
really see what the objection was, but
he said that you would get distortion because there's no merger resistors. This is the one.
No, it didn't say it would get distortion. It said the tubes worked against each other somehow so that it changed the distortion characteristic of the amp. It sounded like it was a fluctuating kind of thing.
That's partially true, because again, each plate is seeing the other one as part of the load, but the plates, because they're current sources, don't care. they don't care. You're gonna load down one plate with the other one, and yes, you'll drop gain. That's what you'll wind up doing, but you're gonna drop half your gain by using your mixing resistors too. So the gain's going to drop in half for each channel. By tying the two plates together, you're going to drop their gain too. And since they're each the same tube, you're pretty much going to drop it in half. So I think either way, you're going to lose half your gain. But I don't really see a problem unless, and here's the big unless these two tubes are biased differently. Now you're going to affect
they're biased identically, because they're actually sharing a cap and the bias resistor.
They're even sharing the cathode resistor.
And they're sharing the B plus supply.
Right, exactly. You're sharing the load resistors. You're sharing the cathode. It's like putting two tubes in parallel, pretty much.
Yeah.
The only difference is you're feeding them a different signal. That's all.
The only odd thing is that the voltage drops 10 volts between the top one and the bottom one for some reason.
That's probably because they just had different tolerances on the plate resistors.
Yeah.
And, you know.
Yeah.
If you were to buy a bag of 100K resistors, they would all measure different. Every
Yeah,
single.
sure.
Plus the two triodes will never be identical, right?
No.
They're always going to be different anyway.
Unless they're matched.
Yeah, even then.
Well, you
I
know
know,
what? There's another way to do the reverb, and I'm going to show you all the way I used to do it, which is not like either of these. What I would do is, where is it? Oh yeah, you see this 3 meg and the 10 picofarad? You see how it's coupled with the 0.02? I'll just take
Yeah.
that 0.047 and do a 3.3 meg and a 10 picofarad going from there to here. And then over here on this 12AT7, I would disconnect one of these grids here and put a 1 meg going to ground, and then run a wire with a 500 picofarad, just like on the other one, and run it up to here and get rid of that 220.
That'd be sort of doing the same thing that you're doing, but differently.
Yeah, you're just merging the plates on the AT7
Yeah.
as the merge point, and they're wired together anyway. So it's
Yeah, but the 12AT7 has got the it's got plenty of reverb. I mean, if you separate those grids and give the other one a grid, it still has plenty of reverb.
yeah. I mean, you're not losing any gain at all because that thing's already wired together, and so there you go. That's probably a really good idea right there because you really don't.
And it's transformer coupled too, so it's not like, you know, the other tube. The 12AT7 is transformer coupled.
Yeah.
So it worked well. I mean, that's the way I just dreamed that up, and that's the way I'd done it for years. But then when I saw this other way of just connecting those plates together, that seemed like a lot better way to go.
Heck of a lot simpler.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot simpler.
Take a piece of wire and solder 2 resistors together and jump across another resistor and you're done.
Yep.
Well, another reason I wanted to do this was the possibility of voicing the channels differently. They already are voiced differently, and then so getting a little more variety in sound by being able to connect them together, because they're in phase now. They're no longer.
Yeah, well, see, these two right here, these two triodes, these are the same tube. So all you got to do really is run a wire from pin 1 to pin 6.
Right. Yeah.
Right on the tube. I mean, you know, what we're talking about, a 1-inch piece of wire.
Yeah.
And then just disconnect this 0.047 and you're there. Yep.
And jump across that 220 if you want to.
If you want to, yeah.
Yeah, that's that was another question I had. Wouldn't you want to do that?
To jump across the 220?
Jump across this 220, right? Yeah, that 220.
I don't think there's no voltage drop across it. I mean, it's not going to change anything, really. I mean,
the only thing I thought of, Gerald, is you occasionally talk about resistors getting noise, and so that taking one resistor out of the circuit gives you one less possible noise source.
Well, that's true, and then also the a 220K is going to suppress a little bit of the high end, but it was there before, so I don't know that it would really matter.
That might change the intensity of the vibrato.
Exactly. I was going to say that it'll probably have the intensity of the vibrato.
To jumper that.
Yeah, if you jumper it.
You're right. Good.
Which might be okay because it's pretty strong too.
Yeah.
Yeah, but on the other hand, it's a little bit more work, and maybe not worth doing.
Yeah. Well, you could clip it in, and if you don't like it, leave it alone.
Right.
Yeah, that's where the jumper wires come in handy. Chad's got his hand up. Go ahead, Chad.
I was just going to say this is probably one of those areas where you could put in a hidden switch like you normally like to do underneath the chassis, so you could switch it on or off depending on what you want. So it wouldn't be a quote unquote permanent kind of change.
Yeah, but it's one wire, so the so-called permanence to the change is enough to just pull the chassis and clip the wire. So
Yeah, I know, but some people just like the versatility. You're adding something, adding capabilities as opposed to taking something away.
You know what I like about it is putting the channels in phase.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can run both of them together, and that's really nice. That's really nice doing
I
that.
saw something on the internet the other day, and they were talking about there was a website and was talking about how to hook both of your Fender amp channels together, and they didn't even talk about them being out of phase.
Oh no! Oh no!
Yeah.
Yeah. So they just phase cancel each other, and you just lose all your bottom end, and it sounds
Yeah,
thin.
pretty much. Yep.
Uh-huh.
well, how did they suggest doing it?
Just running a wire from running into number one and out of number two into number one on the other one. That's all they said to do, and I was thinking that ain't gonna work.
No.
Oh, I see. Okay, yeah, that's not going to work.
That's not gonna work. Yeah.
Especially on a blackface amp. I mean,
Yeah.
because
Yep.
even the basements that don't have reverb, the bass channel's got 3 stages of gain, and the normal channel has 2, so they're going to be out of phase too.
Depending on which version of the basement you have. Some of them are in phase.
Which ones?
I think isn't the AB one the AA 864 I think is in phase because it comes in
No.
after. I'm not
No.
looking at the schematic right
No,
now,
it's
but
got,
one of them
it's got 3 stages. AA864's got 3 stages of gain on the bass.
one of them is in phase. I don't remember which one it is,
Yeah,
but
I
there
don't-
one of them is because it comes in after they merge at the same place. I guess is my point.
Yeah. All right. Well, anything else on this reverb mod thing here?
No, I think
No.
we beat this. I think we beat this to death.
Yeah, we did.